Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching NDTV. Work-life balance, they say, is key to both mental and physical well-being. But then, why do the bosses of Indian enterprises often reject this idea? Well, following the controversial statement of Infosys founder Narayan Murthy, who in the past has advocated for a 70-hour work week, now L&T chairperson S.N. Subrahmanyan has gone further and he has called for a 90-hour work week. Both have defended their statements and have said that this is important for nation building. They say for India to compete with the fastest growing countries like China and Japan, the youth of India must commit to working very, very hard. Many have called this approach exploitative and profit driven, and many have also pointed to larger questions. Is this idea even feasible? Is it critical to make work your world to be a successful professional? What happens to the other aspects of life? Is work just about life? What happens to household work and equal parenting? While the vision of a prosperous India is compelling, it will remain incomplete without addressing gendered realities and also the well-being of its youth. Today, we shall look at the various layers to this story. Joining me now is Chocko Valliappa, who is the CEO of Vee Technologies. We have Mr. Himanshu Arora, who is the CEO and co-founder of Gomchanik. We have Shruti Swaroop, who is the founder of Embrace Consulting. She's an HR expert. We also have Brinda Adige, who's a social and women's activist. Thank you all of you for joining me on this show. To you, Chocko Valliappa first. The first thing that is very clear to me is that successful professionals are working harder than ever. It's not even a 40-hour work week. It's a thing of the past. Even a 60-hour work week is, again, a thing of the past. It's not seen as a path to the top. That also is being considered part-time. What's the point of asking, our people to keep working more and more? Is that how corporate India wants its youth to look at work?
Yeah, Vasundhara. So I think it's more so a generational divide in a way. Like, you have Gen X and you have Gen Z. And I think it's the Gen Z, this mindset is totally different. They're looking at work-life balance. They're trying to, they're probably much more smarter than the Gen X of the world, like where we were. So what is needed though is efficiency, right? So it's not the hours that you work, but how effective are you working, right? So you may work 5 hours a day, but you need to be effective, because very often it's not at work that you get the best ideas. Like, Newton found gravity by an apple falling down his head. So was he working, not working? So it's not what the hours you put, but what you do in that hours that count. So it depends on what industry you are in and stuff like that. If you look at India, so we moved from a 6-day work week to a 5-day work week. And why did we do that about 30, 40 years ago? It's because to get a more work-life balance. And work-life balance, not necessarily about spending time with, it could be with parents, it could be doing what you love, what you do, and, stuff like that. So.
Shruti Swaroop, as an HR expert, how do you see the contradiction that even Mr. Valliappa was pointing out? There is one generation that is saying that, how much ever you work, it's not going to be enough because we are working for nation building. And then there's another generation, which is Gen Z, which is talking about its rights, which is talking about looking at other aspects of life, which is also talking about sharing responsibilities with partners. They say that work is not, life is not completely about work. So how do you see the contradictions and how is corporate India looking at this?
I think we need to understand that people are most efficient only up to about 6.5, 7 hours in a day. Beyond that, the efficiency goes down. We know about the diminishing, utility of time, and we know all the science and economics here. The thing is, we need to understand that beyond a point, you can only make a person appear busy. You can make a person sit in front of the laptop, but you will not be able to get the performance and productivity that we want in an organization. So it's more important to focus on the efficiency part of it rather than the number of hours. Clocking hours, I think we need to move beyond that. A person is most effective when the person has time to do other things. A person is most effective when he or she is following their passion. So we need to let people be a little and focus more on overall well-being. Even the labor law doesn't allow you to work beyond 48 hours.
There are these laws, and of course, there are these differences between generations. But like you said, people have limited time to be effective, and it's important to address everybody's limitations. Mr. Arora, how do you see this argument? Because the idea of nation building is very compelling, because we're all Indians, and every time somebody says that this is you have to approach it from the standpoint of duty, all of us get completely sort of like, we buy that argument. But how fair is it to the employee and his family, who clearly, who's not clearly making this money? How fair is it to that employee's children and to his parents, who also need his or her time?
No, that's absolutely true. And I come in from a simple ideology of building a startup, right? In a startup ecosystem, working long hours is the new normal that we have all seen. And when people start working long hours, they're primarily following their passion. And with passion, you sometimes don't really realize how many hours you spend in the office. I mean, I'm sitting in office right now. It's 7:30 in the evening, and we start our day at about 9:30. It's about almost to about 10 hours, 11 hours a day. So it's all about what you do and which juncture of your professional growth you are in. If you're in your mid-20s and you're now following your professional growth, who stopped you to work 12, 13, 14 hours a day? When you are now getting to a state where you're getting settled and you're now towards your marriage and towards your kids, maybe that's a time you bring in a little bit of work balance. India, as a growing economy, definitely needs some hard working hours and definitely requires people to operate at certain level. But primarily, I come in from a simple ideology. If you enjoy what you do and the work generally doesn't feel work to you, then you are there for a number of hours. You're not really counting hours. Whether you're productive, non-productive, doesn't really matter. You enjoy what you're doing. You enjoy meeting your colleagues. You enjoy spending time with them, making sure that you're coming in with great ideas. And people love doing that. So primarily from that simple ideology, if work doesn't feel work, then what's number of hours here? It's about you spending time either at your home, chit-chatting, watching Instagram, and meeting your friends for drinks, or you're working at office and doing the same thing and also being productive for your organization, for your country, and growing. And maybe this is the age for those early 20s to make sure that they're able to give their extra hours so that these short-term wins can lead to long-term gains, right? So today it could be those long hours, but tomorrow it could be the balance that you are able to strike there.
So that's a very interesting point. Brinda Adege, I also wanted to ask you this question. There's this interesting point that Himanshu also makes, that, the more successful you are, probably, you also feel better to chat at home. You are less under pressure. So that's at least the assumption. But the language that many of these top leaders use, I mean the CEO of L&T, or for that matter, even Mr. Narayan Murthy, staring at your wife, what does one do at home, come to office, start working. This, in some ways, it makes you think there is less regard for household work. What really is then the idea of what is the future of ideas such as equal parenting, shared responsibilities, if bosses think like this?
Yes, I feel that was a very sexist comment, that you work 90 hours and why should you go and sit and stare at your wife's face, or for that matter, your mother or your sister's face or your parents' face, and all of that is unacceptable. When we are talking about when people claim that there is a passion and they are passionate about working in an office, so where is the passion now to build the family, to bond with the family? Whose responsibility and job is that? What about our children? What about our parents, aged or otherwise? So if that bonding is not there, and you consider the family to be available and there for you when you need that family, but you're not there to bond with that family, isn't going and working, even if you're very passionate about whatever, almost bonded labor? You are passionate, of course, but what is your work-life balance? That this phrase, what does it ask for? What does it matter? What is the definition of this? And at the end of the day, we must realize that anybody who claims that work in your 20s and ease down in your 30s and 40s, and after all, now, 60s are now the middle age, when do you look after your own body? We need to understand that all of this is balance, and that balance comes only when you have the time to spend for all of these various things. Today, we know that a lot of them spend much more time on the road, traveling. We also know a lot of them carry work home. So irrespective of when you log out in your office, you're still carrying home. If there is an emergency, you are available for that call. So given all of these things, Are you not working for this office that you are employed at almost all the time? So, what is your time? What is time with the family? People will talk, okay, it is quality time, even if I spend 20 minutes. Really? So, these are questions we want to ask. It's very easy to say these kind of things. What about household chores? Is it enough that you have somebody who's going to do maybe a domestic help or a cook or somebody like that, but you still have chores to do? The house has to be maintained. Somebody is looking after it. And all of the burden, mind you, falls on women many times, even though women are also working out in offices. So, that said, I think we should be careful when we want to talk about work balance, work life balance, and talking about this 70, 90 hours and making trivial statements. Why are you going to be looking at your wife's face? So what? If I want to look at my wife's face, somebody must now tell me not to look at my wife's face. So you see how much of my private space is being impinged upon.
Right.
And there is also an entitlement to that question when somebody asks.
Right.
So I think it is time we understand what is freedom and personal time and space.
Right. Shruti, Swarup, as somebody who has worked in the field of HR for long, also help me understand this. Workplaces are also gendered, and there's also, the problem of pay equality. For that matter, women often have to take a break. It's so easy to say work for 70 hours a day. I can't work 70 hours a day because 70 hours a week because I have a child at home. I have to take care of him. But of course, my husband can do that. So clearly, there is, men are probably better off working in the sense, they are better equipped, or in the sense that, they would be possibly, they're better placed to work for more hours in a day or in a week as opposed to women. How does that play out in the corporate psyche?
On one hand, we are talking about inclusion. We keep harping about gender equity. On the other hand, exactly how you said, not everybody can put in so many hours. And the moment you make a statement like this, suddenly you've put the pressure of those 90 hours or 70 hours on everybody. Your HR is not going to come back and say that, okay, Shruti will do it, but Himanshu will not do it. HR will use the same blanket statement for everybody in terms of the number of hours. When it comes from somebody like, the people who've been saying it of late, I think senior leaders are people sitting in positions where what they say is seen as the norm. So we need to be very careful about what we are saying. It impacts inclusion, it impacts equity, it impacts parity, it impacts just how you're modeling the younger generation to be in the long run. So you've just changed the entire thing. There is some moral responsibility we all have about, most people will not even hear this debate that you and I are having today. They will just believe the word that is there in the newspapers, and that's what is going to be the model for them. So you've created a huge fracture in the way corporate works.
Himanshu, I really liked your answer about passion because, work is what drives a lot of us also as journalists. But tell me one thing, what would your advice be to younger people coming to you as employees? Would you also tell them to put in that kind of work that you put in?
Not really. And I always of the opinion that it's about an individual, of how he wants to shape up. Any youth that comes and joins us today we employ about 550 odd people in our company in India. We operate in about 135 odd cities. What we would want to do is, it's primarily, and I started with this conversation, it's to each to its own, right? It's about somebody who's coming with that passion in the auto space. He decides how many hours he has to work in. It's the people who decide, it's their passion for the work that they are deciding to work with us for those number of hours. We have stipulated working hours. We have 8 hours a shift that we are today operating in. We don't have 12, 15 hours mandated on the HR letters. What we tell them, it's 8 hours. Now it's up to you how many hours you have to put in, because you're on your learning stage. Whether you would want to do that extra hours, it's your choice. It's not that somebody is being forced to work for 12 hours a day or 14 hours a day. Most of the people today that are working with us for those longer hours are by choice and not by design, right? So that is how we look at this. And most of my advice has always been, if you think, and we've always learned it that way, if those extra hours can give you an extra learning, then why not? And some of my most difficult learnings have been through those extra hours. When I've burned midnight oils is when I've been able to climb that ladder and I've been able to reach that success matrix. So I would say it's up to you. It's completely on that individual, whether he would want to run those extra hours and he wants to move forward.
My last question to you. Also, tell us this one thing. How do you see this distinction between HR companies organizing, not HR companies, the HR and companies also organizing meditation classes and stress busting sessions and yoga classes, but at the same time, leaders of business enterprises saying that this is your duty and you have to work 70 to 90 hours a week. How do you see that duplicity? Because what is that collective message that corporate India is sending out to its professionals?
Yeah, Vasundhara, so India has become one of the most unhealthy nations in the world, right? The number of diabetes we have is like we're the diabetes capital of the world. And that's all a lifestyle disease, right? So that people encounter. And that's all because of the stress people go through, whether it's the traffic and stuff like that. So, and another big problem that people don't realize, if everyone works 90 hours a day, are there enough jobs in India? Right, so we need as of today we need like 1 million jobs a month. So if everyone ends up working 90 hours, then we will have 2 million jobs to fill or something like that. And there are, like, to each its own, like it was said earlier, because the geek workers today work 16 hours too. And so as a nation we need to look at how the health of the nation can improve. And if you're going to keep people healthier and a happier nation, that should be our focus, right? So success is relative for everybody. There's some people's success is to earn money, some people is to have a better life. So what are we talking about is the question, right?
Thank you so much, all of you, for joining me on this broadcast. The purpose of living, like our panelists have rightly pointed out, is not just to work, but also to have meaningful human interactions with friends, families, and also have better experiences in life, have greater time for intellectual stimulation, healthy physical activity, all of that, all while on the road to chasing what you see as success, because that is very important. Ambition and well-being both have to be balanced. And